morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Starbase's friends around the world. Astro Joe here for RGV Aerial Photography, Starbase Weekly, episode number 145. This will be the 196th flight for RGV at Starbase, and we're here with pictures fresh from yesterday. I'll pass it on over to your host, Stephanie.
G'day from Australia. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome flyover live stream. Today we've got Ryan Hansen with us. G'day, Ryan.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's good to be back here today. We've got a lot of unique angles for this flyover, so get to see some new stuff we haven't seen before, and there's a lot of exciting stuff to cover here today.
And we have Alex as well. G'day, Alex.
Hello, Steph and Ryan. It should be a good show from wonderful sunny LA today.
Just on that note, we'll just get a bit of our thoughts and our good luck with everybody over there in California having a bit of a tricky situation. So with that, let's head over to Massey's. There it is. Cool. Let's start at the can crusher. Actually, start with the crane. So there's a brand new crane we saw from last week. It's in the process of being lifted up, and the old crane is in the process of being torn to pieces. So taller crane for the taller structure with the taller test articles to come along. Now in this photo it's pretty hard to not go straight there, but one of the big things we found this week is some clamp assemblies. Now we went down a massive rabbit hole on our show and tell, which is really worth becoming a member and joining in our show and tell streams to have a bit of to join in the round table conversations. At first we thought maybe for the new OLM, but then looking at the way this test structure is, we think we've eventually worked out that those clamps could be for here and to clamp onto the booster, which would put the engine mounts in between them, which would be for those lugs there. What was your final thoughts on this, Ryan?
Yeah, I think these arm-like structures there, you can see the skinnier end has like a pin in it, and that'll end up pinning to the test structure. And then there's a flat plate at the top that we believe will actually get a clamp assembly attached to it. There's kind of the three bolts in a triangular pattern there that they could bolt like essentially the clamps they plan to use on the new LLM. They can bolt to that, and then they can do all of their testing now directly clamped to the boosters. So they could do load testing on the new design. Probably the first thing we'll see come out here will be the bottom of the booster, the aft end. There'll probably be some sort of a test tank, and given the timing that these have shown up, they're probably going to get to doing this here soon, and we might actually see some version 2 booster test tanks come out and be tested on this stand for the first time, and I bet these have something to do with that.
Absolutely, and we can also see a hole up in there, which is perhaps to connect an actuator perhaps to these triangle pieces to allow them to be pulled in and out, either inwards or outwards. So the L shape up there, it appears they'll be vertical, the longer bars, and the shorter L might be towards the outside, which would center the clamps once again over the center of these other lugs. So we saw with the ship sat a fair way on the outside of this bottom plate here. So it appears that that's where the thrust for the engine mounts, the thrust simulator rams should be. So the old pull down rams are still to go on the outside for the big blue rods, which are now undercover back there. So we see them extended as well. I think the first article might be a tall one because of the tall rods. Unless they may put a smaller one in, I guess, to test all this down here and not hook up the longer rods, because they've moved these up here as well, those mounts, and they've also mounted the twisting ones. So for the longest time I was relating in show and tell, it's been puzzling as to how on earth they were going to hold a booster down here, and those clamps now show it, because I wasn't convinced that the hydraulic actuators were capable of these actuators. I wasn't convinced they were capable of holding sideways stresses. Generally don't want to put sideways stresses on these sort of actuators. So it's good to see now we have an answer to that question, that there's actually going to be clamps. It still sort of begs the question how they're going to resist the forces, the twisting forces that are going to be exerted by these rams up on the top of the cap here, that'll twist the cap around. So I still think there's a little bit more to this to hold the clamps in that motion from left to right, say, on that one.
Yeah, I'm expecting to see some sort of hardware attached to that circular beam that goes around that will then attach to those. Essentially, they're creating like a standoff between that bottom plate and the bottom of the booster so that they can put the rams in. And I imagine there's going to be some sort of hardware attached to that to kind of keep those vertical instead of twisting or even just falling, because they're kind of on a pivot point at the bottom. They're going to want to fall either direction. So something will probably also hold them from pivoting there as well.
This skirt of the test article will help keep them locked in one position as well.
Actually, yeah, once
But
the clamps are tight too, would that offer a bit of lateral support as well? Once that's physically attached to a booster, it would resist that sort of sideways movement to a
I'm
certain extent.
I'm in agreement with Ryan. There's probably going to be some lateral bracing to the the longitudinal band, the lower one, to offer stability, so it's more or less locked in place.
Given that those A-frame pieces are near those clamps, they're probably, or not clamps, the arm pieces, they're probably related. We just don't have a clear indication yet. But I feel like those may end up being welded to that ring beam, and then they provide some sort of support to the tops of those arms.
I was looking
Yeah.
at that with the gap there, with the height of the clamps. Excuse me, they may even, like we've seen before, they may even add another ring in here yet to bring that, what you're saying, just down a little bit. But like I said, we'll just have to keep an eye on that in the very near future.
The lower legs are very wide, so that would offer the most bracing.
Yeah, I think those in a vertical position would be pretty close to where that ring is, because if you look at the actual test stand where the connections were made, it actually sticks up quite a bit from the flooring. And if you measure the distance from that to the beam and then compare that to the actual standoff arms, it's getting pretty close, vertically to where you would want to end up anyway.
Okay, that's a good point. I hadn't actually taken that into consideration. Thank you. Yep.
And the other thing, the test tank will probably be about the same size as the previous one that was here, since the bottom is elevated for all the actuators to do their business.
Well, that is a good point too, actually. So it'll start. Yeah, perhaps maybe a ring or two tall, but yeah, I can see what you mean. So the bottom of the booster would be somewhere up at that height now. So that would be the booster height, sort of that height, or maybe up to somewhere up to here somewhere, sort of that height up to say here somewhere.
Right. So the cap will be sitting on the upper ring.
Yep.
I'm guessing that the test tank that will come out here will probably be a booster aft and a booster forward, and they might skip the common dome for now, because there's likely a redesign related to the grid fins if the renderings are at all correct, and we know the bottom of it's going to be a little bit different due to the new engines and the clamping interface. So they probably want to combine those tests if possible. I don't see a if they just want to do the bottom of the booster, they probably don't need a tall tank. But if they want to combine, tests to get maybe a full booster in there to test multiple things at once, they might have to skip the common dome. I'm not sure if there's enough room to do all of that hardware without, it kind of inadvertently affecting each other. You kind of want those to be, independent, given how far away they are going to be on an actual booster. So we might see basically just an aft and a forward welded together for that.
Absolutely. And for now, my voice is coming through a bit quiet. I was a bit far away from my mic. For now, we can still assume, I think, 33 engine, so only 3 center engines. We've got that ring over here that I think shows that there's still only 3 engines in the center going to be tested for now. Let's talk about a 35 engine booster, but I think for now, Block 2 perhaps going to stay with 33 engines. This little this little center ring is only set up for the 3 center engines for now. In saying that, in the future, when they decide to start on Block 3 boosters, this should be able to be modified once again to handle the 5-meter engines for a 35 engine. But I think for now it's going to be still only 33 engines. I think we've come to that consensus in the show and tell.
Yeah, we previously worked out that the kind of center points in that structure there that your cursor's on, those do not correlate to where the engine positions would be. That's simply just a stress or it's a distribution structure so that the forces are distributed. It's very similar actually to the original crusher with its layout, the kind of the gridded layout. So that does not indicate anything related to 35 engines. It's just for distributing the forces.
Sort of
We
like
saw-
an ISO grid.
We've seen that previously, haven't we, Ryan? This sort of structure even for the old booster, was it? For the old test stand?
Yeah, the old stand, I'm pretty sure there's photos that show, before it was filled with concrete, that it also had a very similar layout. It might actually be the exact same. So it really does not indicate that they're actually planning, 35 engines. Plus, we worked out that the current positions of where those are, I spent some time on this, I think a couple months ago when this piece first showed up. The nozzles would actually interfere with each other if they basically put them straight up and down. So that doesn't indicate 35 engines. That basically just gives them a working space then to lay out their test rams.
Okay, good. And yeah, like I say, the what they're actually building also shows that it's only 3 engines on the very center.
I think
So
the 10 engine one was just above there to the right.
correct.
Yeah, there's the middle ring. So we're pretty sure that it's still going to be just 33.
And concrete, still not sure about concrete. Yeah, I think they were saying there's what do you call them? The Nelson studs are in here for concrete, so there's a good chance that'll be filled with concrete sooner or later.
Yeah, it'll be filled with concrete for sure, and then the different rings will be placed in there on top of that, and they may actually attach to the points that we can see in in there. It's possible, but there's probably enough of an offset on that to get them to directly under the center where the engines would be.
That would make sense for that bigger circle in the center being looking like it's 5 point circle, but it's actually to make the circle big enough to mount that very center ring in there to give it some strength onto the steel itself. So one of my thoughts with the new Block 2 boosters, I think one of the things they're testing for also is a lighter booster, so trying to reduce its weight a little bit. So perhaps they're trying to remove some structure and still see if that will handle the forces during launch, because all phases of launch I think they're saying was it 30 Gs or something silly on a booster, or 20 Gs on a booster when it's doing its backburn. Something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, I believe the boost back is maybe quoted as being around like 20 Gs at some point.
That's a lot of force. It makes takeoff seem quite tame, really.
Yeah, takeoff is limited for cargo. How many G's they'll allow it to accelerate to.
I guess in the future, especially human cargo. Now, they've taken the rams back out of this little structure. I'm not even sure what this thing is still. I'm really confused about this little piece of hardware here still. And another big development, so we just jump over to it, is this little piece of structure over here. Now, we can see their wedges with part circles on the center. We've counted 10 of these things, including one down here, and also a center section here. Ryan has quickly put together this little render, how it should look. So we've got 10 sections. And we think that'll sit on the base of the can crusher. Still a bit confused as to what it's going to do or how it's going to be placed in there.
I had a bit of a idea just now. If you if you look up at the ring of the center ring, I think there are 10 pins on on the ground. Yeah, so for those 10 holes. That I'm wondering if you look at the ring of the center ring, where it has the where's the 10 engine ring with the clevises, and where it has the extra holes. I'm wondering if there'll be pins that'll line up that they'll be able to drop it in.
Okay. So maybe that will actually house those
Ye-
those will actually go up through those holes, and that might go up through the center of that may
This
contain a center ring.
correct.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good guess. I like that. And would this be the right way up?
Yeah, because if they put the concrete in, they could either their fondness of welding, because they'll need some sort of mounting surface for those concentric rings.
We get a bit of an idea of the hole. Oh, at least a pin. If not, I was thinking perhaps they would stick up through. These might stick up through the ring, but even a pin system, like you said.
Yeah, because if you look by the small ring, um, this if it, somewhere around here I saw 10 pins, 4 with 1 on top, and I can't find it right now.
Little rascal's gone and hidden on you. That happens.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
That's half the fun of Starbase. You won't see it on that one probably. Oh, there.
Oh yeah,
no.
they're directly below, in between the lattice work. What are those rusty things?
Okay.
Sort of potentially. It's just
Well, they're in the right area to be associated, and there's 10 of them. That's always a good sign.
Kind of a flared top too, like they're an insert.
yeah, that's what drew my eye to them.
There's still a few more pieces going on here. Very good. Okay, so we'll definitely keep an eye on all those parts. That's a exciting development here at Massage. You should have heard show and tell when we first saw these clamps. We were like, OLM, OLM, and then we thought, nah, hang on a minute. This why is it's in It's in test stand grey rather than OLM grey, which sort of led me to think this may be OLM related because this is in OLM grey and not test stand grey. But anyway, nothing a lick of paint won't fix.
Yeah, I'm not convinced about that new plate being part of the crusher. It's possible, but I don't know. It doesn't really match up in terms of what I guess I think, but we'll see.
That's
I
half
can
the
see,
fun, Ryan.
Indeed, it is.
I can see someone eating crow. Alrighty, well, so we'll keep a good eye on this area in the very near future. We'll move on to the other end of the site because sometimes when you think all is sleepy, things continue to happen. And we have some, and where's the good, this one. We've got a new drilling machine and some rebar. There's its flights. It's got two power heads. We're not sure why. And looks like we're getting ready for a horizontal hot dog tank here.
And there's another set of flights as well of
These
below.
three.
Yeah, and then there's some below by the clean out.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Oh, the old booster hot stage ring is still there. So, although it appears this is concrete, that isn't concrete. We think that's just a prepared surface, and they're yet to drill piles down into these to create a mount for a hot dog tank. And it's a kind of a peculiar spot to put a hot dog tank, considering there's an offload point here, but I guess they're easily moved.
That might be a nitrogen offload port, so they could relocate it quite easily.
They'll have methane offload here. Is methane here or over there? It's here, isn't it?
It's where your hand with stuff.
Yeah.
There's two of them.
Two of them at that end. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yep, thank you. Some really good photos of this. And at the same time, over yonder, where we thought they might have already poured the concrete, we can see the concrete's not up to grade here. So once again, I think they're going to drill some piles here to mount the vertical tank there. So I thought we sort of first speculated that maybe they were going to put the nitrogen liquid tank down here for the deluge pump, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. So it appears we still have this tank for the vertical nitrogen tank up in here. That'll have piles underneath it,
And
and still more concrete to come.
and it looks like there's some markings between the vertical tanks right there that they're probably going to be drilling some more.
Are they pointing that way to point that way to point this way to point this way? And we've got SpaceX's philosophy going around and around circle. No,
Yeah.
that's only a joke.
It's the
Okay.
Spider-Man meme.
Okay, how are we going? Oh, cool. We're taking more time than I thought we would. So there's some, oops, that's the wrong spot. Some interesting developments there with these tank mountings. So obviously SpaceX has learnt to put piles on every single tank these days, which is good to see. I think we saw that quite a lot through here as well, as they're building up this area in masses. I think we can shift over to questions and donations, Joe, please. Or maybe not just yet. Okay, I did see one question. I'm going to jump in while we're waiting for Joe to get the questions ready. Could this be to help test the G-forces on boost back, which I kind of broached that a minute ago. But absolutely, this thing can produce all sorts of forces, I would imagine.
I think since they'll be probably redesigning the clamp interface, based on the cutouts on the new launch mount, it seems like the clamps are going to be a different shape. Like they might actually be skinnier. Um, they're going to want to have a test tank that'll actually test to make sure those interfaces are enough to hold the rocket when it's like fully fueled and everything else. So part of this is probably going to be a test of the clamping interface. They'll pull down on it with the forces that they expect when it's fully fueled. And as the ships and boosters grow in size, there's going to be more propellant mass inside of them, so those clamps are going to have to hold more force. So this will likely be used to certify the version 3 as well as the version 2 booster as they work toward producing those.
Absolutely. Okay, so while we're waiting for Joe, I'll jump over to
I'm good.
this. Oh, cool. Right, but questions and donations, please.
All right, excellent. I want to thank Methane Man, Callistia Lee, and Jake Winlow, all for gifting 5 memberships. That is awesome. I do believe we also missed a $25 PayPal donation from Crane Man on last week's stream, so I wanted to thank him for that. Also, I think you all have already addressed these questions, but I'm going to go ahead and ask them anyway. So here we go. If I could get my mouse to work, hold on. All right, question from Phil. Do you expect Block 2, as I get another question coming in, do you expect Block 2 that is the next test article or just a generic test article to test the new height and everything works how they expect it to with that test stand there?
Ryan?
It's possible, yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, agreed. Sorry.
Question from Crane Man. Could the Massey's test stand have anything to do with the high amount of G-forces that the booster experiences after hot staging? There you go. I believe that was already addressed.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
And another question from Crane Man. Let's see, that was up at the top left, I believe, of Massey's. 2 drill heads for 2 different diameter drills.
Thank you.
There are 2 different auger strings, but traditionally each of the drive head can handle variable size.
They kind of look identical, don't they? Too.
They should be fairly close to.
Maybe there is a difference under here. Look underneath, perhaps. You might be right there, Methane Man. Okay, thank you, Joe.
All right. Last question from Kal-El. What happened to that one tank from the nitrogen farm?
Yeah, it kind of got like a cigarette and kind of got burnt. I'm not actually sure. Just a
Yeah, exactly.
bit of general corrosion, a big grackle. I'm not sure, actually. Any thoughts, Alex?
No, I thought those have been a little moldy for a while.
A bit of mouldy. There's a bit of it going around.
Yeah.
Bit contagious.
I mean, with all the mud and the moisture, and yeah, they need a good pressure washing.
Okay, we're going to move on to the commercial lot here. There's a bit going on over here. As you can see some down here. You can see a lot of the pilings exposed. It appears to be a footing here rather than a trench for commodities. I mean, there are some conduits in here, but it looks like a perimeter type footing. And I think that's one of the more exciting weeks we've had at Massey's, so I think it's well worth spending a little bit extra time over at Massey's this week. You should have seen us in Chantel. We were there for an hour. Trying to nuddle it out. So last week we saw these, which we thought were floor panels over here being assembled, or some of us did anyway. And we thought they were floor panels, but it turned out they were wall panels. Which, what do you call them? A shear wall?
Shear paneling yeah.
Which means that resists that horizontal loading, doesn't it? That way loading.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. And a little bit of an answer to why these edges are crooked. It looks like that's perhaps for a stairwell down in here. It looks like there's a parking bay underneath that end of these. I'm still assuming to housing, so housing unit here. and continuing on, which I think we'll see go quite a long way through the whole block. If there's to be a shopping centre, perhaps at this end there'll be a shopping centre, maybe a few takeaway stores. Like I said in Chantel, it'd be a good investment to take on a food shop in here for sure. And further along, have they excavated more? I think they've excavated more in here. I think, and that weird shaping again along the edges for more housing in here. I mean, some buildings do have edges like that, so I think it's more to do with what's getting built here rather than how they're excavating for any other reason.
Yeah, they've chopped those into finer teeth. Because if you look at the right side by there, that's how both sides were last week, and now the left side has quite a few extra. And you can see the orange paint where they're going to do the same thing, it looks like, on over here.
Correct. Yeah. I didn't see that in Chantel. Yep. And the restaurant, we think that's the restaurant area. It's just still a bit more earthworks going on, so that's good to see that development going forward. Okay, on to Sanchez. So this week's flyer was done in the little 150 Cessna with some questionable weather. So we're getting a lot of... So they didn't go to 10,000 feet because the clouds wouldn't allow for that. So, but that means we get these nice angled photos, which is always good to see. With the angled photos, we get to see in under things sometimes we don't get to normally see.
Did anybody work out what they're welding under that tent? No, by your... Yeah.
No,
Squirrel.
I don't think so. Yes, yeah. But we see a manifold there. So, yeah, work continues on the OLM through some ground shots, especially Starship Gazer. There's been a mess of work. I think Zach might have covered it last week. I fell asleep when it was this part of this show last week. They've cut all the way around under this very outside edge. No idea why. And I think Alex, you were seeing some misfitting pieces up here with the bits not quite overlapping the same along here.
Yeah, since they're doing it around the entire structure, it's almost as if the pancake is slightly smaller than the outer wall. So it may have been more of a construction oversight a change that they're having to account for that bit of an offset.
I think if I designed this whole thing and I was just 1 inch out here or there, I think I'd be pretty happy myself. But obviously, these things require a bit more precision than that.
I mean, the joy of working with steel is a torch and a welt and a MIG kit, you can correct almost anything.
There's a few more of those rusty plates, maybe have been welded on. There's some of these open areas here. There's some of them have been filled in. Like this one here is only sort of halfway filled in. So a ton of welding. Obviously, all the welding equipment you can see all around the place. So lots and lots and lots of welding still going on. What did someone say in chat? This thing's a beast. My goodness, is it what? So the pancake up here, I think we've gone over this perhaps. So there's the manifolds for the outside. So there'll be a water pipe around the outside. And I think through the paperwork we've seen also there'll be holes in the top of the pancake for the water to escape. It doesn't appear that there'll be a waterfall deliberately. I mean, water will obviously fall down there at some stage from the top of the pancake. But I don't think they're going to deliberately make a waterfall in there. I'm not sure about that yet.
There may be enough overlap between the two that they could have holes drilled on the underside of that inner ring.
Correct, yeah. You would think in
So
a waterfall would be advantageous there, wouldn't you?
since the booster sits a little bit low, with ice buildup, they might not want to risk the potential thermal shock.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, the booster's going to sit down like in this a little bit. And in terms of like your activation timing, you're probably going to need to make sure that you aren't spraying water in an area that you don't want it to be. And so, depending on when they plan to activate the top plate, that may mean that there's not water initially, raining down on the inside, but maybe at some point they do have a system that will activate, whether it's separate or combined. There may still be a system in there. We just don't really have any eyes on it yet.
Well, Alex, do you know the outside dimension of this whole monster?
It's, I think, a bit below, probably like 18 or 19 meters, so right around 60-ish feet per side.
Thank you. That'll come. Sorry, Joe. That'll come as a question. Just keep me in kind of a corner of my eye over here in chat. These are all
Yeah, not a problem. Glad you
heading quite
addressed it. Thank
nicely.
you.
It is a
Okay.
monster.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think that's just this little area here. We'll go over to the flame bucket. Just quickly, I'll zoom out a bit with the flame bucket in a sec. They've constructed this framework we believe is temporary. So we still think that this pipe here is the top of the diverter. It's still obviously, I'm pretty sure it's still obviously very much a two-sided flame bucket, so be two exhausts on the flame trench still. I guess this framework here is to facilitate assembly of the actual flame bucket itself. I think Alex and Sharon tell you very valuable in there. Thank you very much. You notice that, just to back up, that this is the bottom and this is the top, that as the beams are coming away from the main blast, that this beam in particular has become significantly less structural, where there's a lot less downward force.
Yeah.
Little yoga pose, downward dog force, whatever.
Well, we're still going to expect the base that these are going to sit on, which from Massey's, it might be pretty massive. Sorry for the horrible alliteration. So, and to the bucket shape to the right, they're starting to finally weld the surface pipes.
Let me just zoom out on that a little bit. Not that one. This one. They're starting to, these pipes. So I think you're talking about these.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and we can see the ends are blocked off, meaning on these ends as well. So the water's going to enter via the T here, isn't it? These T's in here.
Yes. You can just make them out on the pipes on the stands as well.
Some I in there, perhaps.
Yep.
So this will be the tops here.
Yes.
It's good to see all that advancing. There's quite a lot of them to be made up still, by the look of it. We could probably even count me. There's that many to make up. Plus the other
60. There's 63 on one side and 64 on the other. I'm still convinced they drilled that side wrong, but
that would have driven you crazy.
it's still driving me absolutely batty. The 4-hole side is facing inward, all except for the one that we're staring at there.
I see 4.
And
Oh,
there's one less along the flat plane. They're missing one hole on that side, so there's 24 on one and 23 on the other half.
Okay, very good. So that's the flame bucket and the OLM. So as we can see, work is progressing. Over yonder, we're missing one of the jigs. It's probably going in the factory. and a new one's getting set up to be made. Still no idea on this little square. Perhaps it's, like you say, to do with the PES loader, but the PES loader is being assembled in the high bay. Maybe they're going to lift the PES dispenser up and chuck this underneath. Maybe it's for the transporting, looks like an SPMT can fit under it, at least anyway. I'm not really sure on that one yet.
It looks like one could definitely under this between right there. Those legs keep getting beefier by the week.
They haven't done anything extra on this transport stand yet. Yeah, over in this corner, we're missing a manifold for one of the heat exchangers, and we'll come back to that once we get to the launch site. There's another little manifoldy thing in here. There's still lots and lots of GC work going on in the GC building over here. Okay, let's go on to, just while we're here, over here too, there's another new, which may be the lid. I was thinking maybe the roof of the PES dispenser, not sure yet. Sort of one of the few things that are square at the moment. So maybe they all have something to do with each other with the new PES loader, sorry, not PES dispenser, the new PES loader that we've seen high bay getting built. So quickly back here, there's lots and lots of pipe racks here getting assembled and staged, ready to be sent up to the launch site. All sorts of racks and pipe holders and so on, which is good to see. Okay, chopsticks. An exciting development this week is we have some scaffolding missing from the carriage, which is great to see. So that could be after Flight 7, we may see them migrate to the launch site after all. Moving on to the chopsticks. They're looking more and more finished off with painting and a lot of scaffolding removed again. Of course, now we can see much better the hinge. Hang on, I'll get a better photo, give me a sec. Here we go. So we can see the hinge points for the lower stabilising arms. And what we hope is temporary wiring or plumbing here. I think that's temporary, to be honest, because you wouldn't think they'd leave wiring on the inside surface of the chopsticks. This week we can see the dampeners. The 4 dampeners are now in place, 2 at each end, and last week we saw the actuator there. They're starting to mount the pads here. What are you calling those things?
I think we just call them the bumpers, but
The bumpers. That's it. Go ahead.
But yeah, I refer to them as the bumpers, I guess. But yeah, they've started. It looks like they maybe did a test fit after completing all of the brackets to actually attach those to the landing rails. So they did one test fit each.
And perhaps they're doing some tests with the actuators, and that's what the wiring is for.
Oh, that would make sense. Yeah, up to a hydraulic power, to a little power unit down here.
Correct.
Yep. Is that one of those distribution panels? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely looks like it.
I
Wonder.
wonder if that has something to do with it. Oh, sorry.
Quite likely.
More stuff staged on trailers ready to go into launch site. This pile here I noticed is significantly smaller. Actually, just quickly, there was a massive big pile here over the last few weeks. More stands on trailers, so things are really continuing to motor along here at stand sheds, getting things prepped for the launch site. The SQD arm hasn't seemed to have much at all changed. Still haven't finished painting it. We still know. Haven't seen the next part of the arm. I guess the forearm part. Haven't seen anything of that yet, or any kind of plumbing or electrical or anything installed on it yet. So hope we see some more development there in the next few weeks. Okay, we'll move on over to this area. I think we saw those a few weeks ago that they haven't been moved or been made into any kind of thing we can see what it's going to be yet. Okay, let's go on to the scrapyard area. Okay, so we've still got a bit of Ship 26, long-lived Ship 26. The crane yard's just looking like a crane yard. So both booster transport stands are here empty. We saw booster 12 go into the Mega Bay 1, which is not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet for booster 12's sake. Maybe it's a bad thing. A lot of people are hoping that booster 12 will become a display item somewhere. But I'm not sure about that, to be honest. So there's questions about booster 12 reflying. What are your thoughts on that, Ryan? I don't agree with it. What do you think of it?
I don't think there was really ever a plan to try and refly Booster 12. I I think if there would have been a plan to refly it, we probably would have seen them do a bit more with it after its initial flight. It kind of immediately came out here and started getting used to the weather. But they've done some stuff with it. They've been up on the forward dome enclosure a couple of times. It seems like, but I I don't really see them, I guess, wanting to reuse it, especially since they're getting to work with Booster 17. They're going to have basically four boosters that they don't even have enough work stands for. So they'll probably kind of cycle between those four, and I think Booster 12 is going to end up being a little bit like an SN15 for a little while. And their actions with Booster 14.1 kind of indicate that they might be moving in that direction too.
Yeah, and just to add to that, they've already iterated the boosters. So like booster 15, 14, 15, and 16 would have changes that they want to continue moving forward with testing rather than going backward with testing for now. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see a booster refly soon, but maybe not till they've worked out a few more bugs.
I would expect the V2 with Tower B, and they'll age out the last of the V1s on Pad A.
I mentioned to Jax a few weeks ago that it's given how confident they seemed with Booster 13 returning to the tower. They had the transport stand on the road. They were ready. It almost kind of seems like maybe they intended for 13 to kind of be a reused booster, and they might have been in a holding pattern with Booster 17 where maybe they would only build 17 if Booster 13 didn't make it back, because 17 seemed like it was paused for quite a while. Like maybe they were waiting on something, but it might have just been a coincidence with the timing on a lot of that. But I'm kind of tempted that might have been what they were really waiting for.
Cool. Okay, that's enough of booster 14. We can see the ship thrust puck testing rig is on SPMT, so perhaps we'll see ship, let me get this right, 34 out for some cryo testing. And poor old ship 32 still sitting here, feebly waiting its final fate. Can't believe it's still there, to be honest. And ship 20, did I say ship 32? Yeah, then ship 20 obviously is still there as a display item. This is booster 14.1 is now in high bay. It's actually now in 2 pieces. So that's the old transport stand. Which there was thoughts, I guess, like you were saying too, Ryan, that maybe they'll put 14 on this. I guess if they cut 14 in half, at least they can put the bottom half on this old stand anyway, for scrapping purposes.
Yeah, they seemed to move 12 and 14 around the same time, which kind of indicates that they're connected. And the only reason to, move 14.1 into high bay was to scrap it, which they are in the process of doing right now. But that freed up this stand, which is the only, remaining, original stand design that they have for the boosters. And it doesn't really make sense why they would want to free this up so suddenly, especially given the fact that they're using high bay to construct the new, PEZ loader. The timing seems to indicate that they want this stand free so they can put a booster on it. Which the only booster that I can think they would want to put on this would be 12, because any of the new boosters would go on the new transport stands to the right there. So I think it's likely that 12 is getting some work done in Mega Bay, and then when it's done, they'll roll this stand in, put 12 on it, and then bring it back out here. And then whatever happens after that, we'll have to wait and see. But I don't think that they're scrapping 12 inside the Mega Bay right now.
Yeah. And the clamps on this, Ryan, are the old-fashioned bolt down for locking, or?
Yeah, these would be the ones where they spend hours with, pneumatic drivers out there taking them on and off. So this is, the most secure way to hold a booster long term as well.
Yeah, so I'm expecting they're probably just doing internal reinforcement on 12 for.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, some sort of internal reinforcement. And if they do something like that, they can possibly put it closer to the road, because it'll be a little bit more safe. There's no risk of collapse at that point. So, yeah, I'd love to see that.
Let's keep an eye on the triangle at the building, at the office.
Ah, yeah. Hey, look, there's some. Didn't see this in Chantel. They're digging up a bit of dirt here. Where is that? Maybe another.
But
Maybe another stand. I mean,
yeah,
like a what do you call it, base?
yeah, it looks very similar to the right dimensions.
That'll be like another ship stand, perhaps.
I'm not sure they would really need that quite yet, but maybe they're getting, ahead of it, because, they still have quite a few workstations in Mega Bay 2 that they can, put a ship on in the time being. So, it's possible.
Okay, with that, I think we can go over to questions and donations, please, Joe.
All right. I want to thank the lovely Miss Jax for gifting a membership. I want to thank Ethan Tabor for becoming a member at the RGV Flight Supporter level. Sharpie, thanks for the $5 super chat. Says good coverage. Appreciate that, buddy. Ninja Decimator, pew pew pew. $5 super chat. Thanks for all you guys do. Love the content. Hey, we do too, buddy. Thank you very much. Also want to thank Izada for a $10 super chat. I love these shows, he says. Yeah, we do too. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that. Question from Crane Man. Are there 2 lines of holes in the water manifold on each end of the flame trench deluge ramp?
Yes, they are.
Oh,
Well,
there
that
is
was a
too.
simple enough
On the
answer.
back, on the back there and on the front. I didn't actually realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. We saw them ages ago, didn't we? Yeah,
Yeah, there was.
You can see the back ones there, and the front ones there.
Yeah, they're hiding under those large tanks that they moved to the Lego stand for a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
All right, a question from Phil. Do you think the new OLM is movable, and once in place, will they build a second one to help with maintenance and the high cadence that they want?
I
Depends who. Oh,
expect
go
it.
on.
Yeah, I expect it to be mobile. They've done a lot of ground prep in this area that seems kind of unnecessary if they're not expecting multiples. And it's also being built with 4-point loads in the corners.
Yeah, uh, I talk with Zach about this quite frequently, so you can say I'm maybe a little biased on it, but I know I do not like the term mobile, because I wouldn't consider this to be mobile in the same sense that, the crawlers are for, 39A and 39B. Um, I I think the term that it maybe describes it better would be interchangeable. They wouldn't be moving these very often. They would not be like the static fire stand that the ship uses at Massey's. This would be something where you do, maybe 20 flights off of, and then you might take a crane out there and interchange it with a second one, roll it back to this site, and do any maintenance work you need to do. I think that's probably likely at this point, but we'll have to wait and see, how things develop at the launch site. Because if it looks like they're going to start, encasing a bunch of stuff in concrete, then you know that it's not going to be moving, very easily at least. So at this point, I'm still camp, interchangeable mount, but we'll have to wait and see if things indicate otherwise.
Yeah, I think Ryan's verbiage is more accurate. And as the clamping mechanisms evolve, it would be good to be able to, since currently it seems like pad A or booster V1 and 2 are somewhat incompatible with the launch table.
The only other side of that coin I've heard really is that they're building this OLM a lot more robust and durable, that they may not need to swap it out if at all, but at least nowhere near as it won't suffer as much damage as the current OLM does every launch. I agree with you. The word mobile doesn't really suit. More interchangeable is probably the better word. Thank you, Joe.
All right, yeah, not a problem. Interesting question from Drew Nar with a $5 super chat. Did Booster 12 ever get static fired after catch, or could they be freeing up the old stand to move it back to the OLM? No.
And it seemed some of the outer Raptor bells were damaged, is coming back down.
Yeah, I don't think they have any intent to static fire or cryo booster 12. I think that they're on to a new evolution of booster. There was, some changes between 12 and 13 and 13 to 14 that there's probably not a lot of use in trying to refly 12. If anything, I bet we'll probably see them reuse 14. But 12, I think they just kind of want to retire it, and it's probably getting, maybe they're putting some engines back on it, some scrap engines from, maybe they sent engines off to be tested at McGregor, and they don't want to fly them again, so maybe they'll put them on 12 and then display it. But I don't think 12 is going to ever fire its engines or fly again.
Hazel reuse those booster version 1 Raptors from booster 4.
Well, if they didn't cut them in half, maybe, but
That's true. I forgot they took a torch to the bells.
All right. I'll take one final question from Sharpie. Is there a new booster quick disconnect?
I guess I've lost track of where that one was that we saw a while back. I thought it was near a tent, but this area has been, I think, reorganized a couple of times since I saw that last. Do we know where that original plate QD assembly was at?
It was around where Stephanie has her hand, or the 2 and behind the communications building. But I
Uh,
have not seen where it wandered off to.
It went back to the port, as far as I know. They're both at the port now, at the airport, sorry, at the airport site.
Oh, we missed the additional capacity for the Starlink station.
Yeah, there's 3 more, what do we call those domes that again, and I've just got from last week. We look here, the mounts were here last week as well for the 3 new domes or spheres, when we call them. So they're the uplink, downlink, the link to the actual Starlink constellations. So they can see from last week they weren't here, and this week they are.
I think
Yeah,
they
3 more.
term those the ground stations, which is like the main hub that would facilitate from, I guess, Earth service up to the constellation.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, with that, let's move on to the build site.
One quick final question from Crane
Yep.
Man. I think we addressed it, but any sign of the SQD arm extension for Tower B?
No, not yet. Not even a piece of steel for it, to be honest. It's a bit of a mystery, that one. Haven't seen
Unless
anything in this area.
perhaps a blue welding tent.
Yeah, I know what. There might be something underneath a blue welding tent. Oh, maybe something under here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
do.
the
Maybe it's in this big tent too. They do some fabrication in here. Not sure. No, there's no physical outside sign though anyway yet. No.
It is a little confusing that they had one in Florida that they could have brought over, but they didn't. And it almost makes me think that they're going to redesign it slightly. But if they were going to redesign that piece, I would have expected the actual arm truss to be a slightly different design. But it looks like it has the exact same connections as what we would on Tower A. So it kind of hints at it being the same design, but yet they didn't bring that one over. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens. There could be pieces here that we just haven't identified yet that it could be that piece, but it's possible that it just hasn't shown up yet.
Yeah, Caps agrees. There's those 2 pieces out of the airport for the booster quick disconnect. Okay, thanks, Joe. We'll move over to the build site now.
Let's do that.
Okay, just while we're here, let's have a quick look at a SpaceX image of Ship 33 getting lifted over onto a stand. So lots and lots of things with Ship 33. We keep seeing more and more things every time we see Ship 33. I think we've already seen at some stage, this is a different application, that they've removed. Ryan, you might have to explain this better. They've removed this little edge part and they've added a stiffening ring.
Yeah, so on the suborbital ships, they always had a kind of a stiffener plate around the perimeter or the circumference of the bottom of the ships that kind of helped keep them more cylindrical, in flight. And we've seen a lot of different iterations of the supports in the actual skirt structure, but for the most part, that was just unneeded mass. That they can get away with these supports that they currently have, which are actually a lot. They look like they're a lot stronger than what they had before. Before they basically had these soup stiffeners that went around. These are a little more elaborate and they stick out a little bit more. So there's a little bit more rigidity in those pieces. And like I said, the part that they had before at the very bottom of the skirt was essentially unneeded. It was just excess mass that they could get rid of, and that's one thing they're really trying to do on these version 2 ships is decrease a lot of the dry mass that they don't need. So you can see that there's still the lip or groove. It's more of a lip around the outside of the ship. It's kind of, right there. So that basically creates kind of like a V shape that then sits in a shape on the top of the booster. So there's a groove that kind of matches the opposite of the ship here. And so that's actually what is the interface piece between the ship and it was the booster, but now they copied the top of the booster and put it on the top of the hot staging ring. So they could basically adapt that in there. So in the current setup, that piece then interfaces with the top of the hot stage ring, which then, same method. They've got the bottom of the ship on the bottom of the hot stage ring, and then the booster then sits into that. So it's kind of like a little Lego piece that all kind of fits together. And so that's all that they have now is just this lip, which reduces a lot of the mass. And it's something that when I first saw this photo, I had to kind of get used to because I thought it was unfinished, but it definitely looks a lot cleaner having just that lip exposed there around the outside.
And another advantage is the 3 hold-down clamps have a little bit more freedom to flex, so there's less of a chance of them binding up, since that large lip would act sort of like a lever point when it would sort of flex one way or the other.
And here we can actually see what you highlighted there, Stephanie. Those aren't actually the clamps. That's actually the vents for presumably the liquid oxygen. So there's the 3 of them that are kind of spaced at 120 degrees. The clamps are actually over a little bit to the left, underneath. Yeah, right to the left of no, a little bit further up, to the left a little bit more. Yeah, right. Oh, we went past it. There's a little gap basically right to the top right of your cursor. Yep, right there.
Yep.
That's actually where the clamps will clamp to the ship. There's basically a plate in there that has a cutout in it. You can actually kind of see the shadowing of the cutout, and that's actually where the clamps on the booster and the transport stand will actually clamp. They push outward against the skirt to actually hold it in place. And so the ship has 6 of those around the bottom. They use the 6 of them, I believe. Actually, I think they've only functionally used the 3 on the transport stands as well as the top of the booster. But they have the 6 like tongue groove pieces that can fit up in that area.
Yeah, it's sort of like a seat belt.
So these just vent into the hot stage ring, do they?
So those are the vents that we can see venting after the ship's engine shut down. There's kind of like if you go and look at the launch footage, there's venting that kind of escapes the skirt, and that's actually coming from those. It's essentially the skirt RCS. I believe they actually kind of use it to help reorient the vehicle from kind of its side to the belly during reentry. It's over like a slow sort of deal, but they do a lot of venting from that area, and it appears like it is the liquid oxygen dump.
Well, I was convinced they were the clamps for some reason, but anyway, thank you very much for all that. Another interesting thing in this photo is the face hugger here on this particular stand. I'm not sure it's on all the stands because we can't see around that much, but there's a ship quick disconnect interface there.
Wonder if that's from the old static fire stand with how scorched it looks.
I was wondering if that was from Pad B, but I thought that the one from Pad B might have been used. Was it at Massey's, or did they have a new one at Massey's? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
And then there was the other one at the airport that was sort of cut up a bit as well, which obviously isn't that one.
I know one of them was identified as the one from Pad B. I just don't remember where it was and what they did with it.
Cool.
But it's
So
possible that could be from Pad B.
Yeah, cool, thank you. So ship 33, she's missing a few... I apologise for that. She's missing a few tiles deliberately at a pit... Sorry, it's a different application. Every time I push my push to talk and scroll my wheel, it goes through the photos. So these appear to be... Is it just the felt painted underneath and there's no even ablative underneath? Is that correct?
It kind of depends. Some of these we can see netting with the correct lighting angle. It's not actually in this image. It's I believe Starship Gazer has some other images of different angles that show the lighting at the right angle that you can actually see netting on some of them, which indicates that it is the wool that we can see underneath, but it's actually just been spray painted black to kind of match. And then there's other spots that you can clearly see that there is kind of a little cutout for the ablative pyron material around the pins themselves. So it might vary depending on where they are on the vehicle. It's hard to tell if this is cuts in the pyron or if it's actually the wool that they've just painted black.
And there's like 50 odd tiles. They're all over the place missing, even on the aero surfaces here, aero covers.
I'm pretty sure, so right where your cursor was, at the top of the static aero cover for that side, that flap, that one right where your cursor is, that one, there is an image that you can see the cutout for the pyron around the pins. So I know that at least right there you can see the pyron underneath instead of the wool.
Cool. And there's some, I can't see in this image, but there's some, it almost looks like one down here. There's a couple of tiles that are like pyramid shaped in the center of the tile. They're raised in the center of the tile, right up on the nose cone. There's quite, and somewhere there's metal. I don't think anyone's found it yet. A metal liquid cooled tile somewhere they're testing.
Hey, I mean, the alloys are using it might be very similar to the color of the existing tiles, so it might be fairly well blended.
So many things. So ship 34's over there, almost ready for cryo testing. It doesn't appear to have its aft flaps still. I don't know that anyone's seen any aft flaps go in yet, so still suppose we'll wait for the aft flaps to go on before it goes to Massey's for cryo testing. It's usually the way it works, I think. And ship 35, look at a nice view of the camera up there. So ship 33 has, what, 30 odd cameras on board this time, so we're going to get some awesome imagery from that in the next flight. Okay, speaking of Starship Gazer, you got an awesome photo here over on X. So feel I can show stuff that's here on X because it's already been published. Be sure to go and give Starship Gazer a follow on X. And I'm just going to give him a big shout out right now. And right now he has he's in need of a little bit of help right now. I'm not sure whether he wants me to say these things or not, but it would be a really awesome time right now to go and support Ryan over at Starship Gazer. He would really appreciate it. Here he can see the new landing pin, which I'll hand it back over to Ryan again. These aren't structural, and there's a reason why they put them on afterwards.
Yeah, so these are the non-structural catch pins that they're going to use on Flight 7 to basically test to see if this sort of a design will work in the thermal environment with all the plasma. And we'd seen them. They cut the holes in 35 so that they can stick a structural pin through, very similar to the booster. So this is essentially just the design from the surface of the ship outward. They've kind of like chopped it and they bolted it onto some studs that were extending out from that area on the ship. And so what we're actually looking at is kind of the leeward side. So there's tiles that wrap over the top and other side of this piece here, and then the back side there's just a metal plate which is kind of hidden in the shadows here. But so this is what they're testing. It is non-structural. It is a little interesting. The little rectangular plate that they have hanging down from the bottom appears to have a little bit of a curve to it, as if, kind of giving the same effect that the ball joint on the boosters load pins kind of give. So if the ship gets caught, it can kind of rock back and forth. But there's some interesting issues with this design that maybe I'll try and briefly cover. But the 4-point lifter that they use to lift the ships in Mega Bay 2 actually connects below where this pin protrudes from the side of the ship. And so we saw them lift Ship 33 in Mega Bay 2 the other night, and they had to set it down on a transport stand and then move the 4-point lifter out of the way. And it was only after that that they could then bolt on these pins, because they actually protrude out and conflict with the 4-point lifter. So some sort of a redesign is going to have to be done at some point. Whether these end up going below the socket system that they use with the 4-point lifter, or maybe the 4-point lifters themselves get modified. But something is going to have to be done, because they can't actually have these catch pins on the ships at the same time that they want to use the 4-point lifter. So if they catch a ship and they want to bring it back to Mega Bay 2 to put it on a stand, they have to remove the catch pins from the ship. in order to use the 4-point lifter. So something is going to have to change here. I'm suspecting that they may do away with the pin system. They may go to just the catch points here, the little catch arms. But we'll kind of have to wait and see what they do. I'm going to guess that these ships were designed and built before the idea of catching was kind of at a forethought. And because these ships started performing so well, specifically, 29, 30, 31, the idea of catching kind of moved up. So they're having to kind of retrofit a lot of this stuff on hardware that currently exists. So it's possible around maybe like ship 37 or 38, we see a completely, different configuration of all of this stuff here. So we'll just kind of have to keep our eyes out. But yeah, that's what the non-structural ones look like.
Well,
So is
to
there
your
even a
point,
chance? Sorry, go on.
to your point, Ryan, if they switch up to 4-point lifter to grab these, they can reduce the weight a bit and get rid of the current socket bulge that they're trying to protect.
Yeah, if we have another image that kind of shows that, we can maybe talk about that in more detail, or maybe we wait till we get to the launch site and we show the aerial images. But this ship was designed with the idea that you can kind of actually see in the very bottom part there by your cursor, that's actually where the socket goes into the side of the ship to lift the ship. And so when these ships were designed, the tiles were all through that area. And one of the optimizations that they made from the version 1 to the version 2 was they actually moved that socket out so it was flush with the tiles. And so now that they're actually removing the tiles from the sides of the ship, at least in this area for now, we'll see maybe that changes. That socket is now out away from the face of the ship. So now they have this issue that if they try to catch this, or I should say catch this sort of a design, they essentially have to have these little ramps over the top of that area so that the bumpers on the catch arms have something to move over, and so they basically don't rip off. So there's kind of an issue there that kind of has to be resolved, assuming that they don't have tiles along the sides here. If they are a tile that is along the sides, that might be why they're testing a metallic tile so that they can actually hit the tiles with the arms and not have them break. So we'll have to wait and see it. Ship 33 is essentially a test bed for a lot of different things. There's a lot of experiments happening with this ship, and this is by no means a representation of what Ship 36 is going to look like. They're doing a lot of tests here, and we kind of just have to sit back and watch and see what happens.
So they could even go as far as to take the socket system completely off the ship and do it's a booster system with lifting by the catch pins, with obviously with a lower stabilizing socket like a booster, and not have the ship lifting pins on the new chopsticks even. Like, no part's the best part. It's kind of philosophy.
Yeah, I believe long term we're going to see the catch pin move down where the lifting lug somewhat is, so they can tie it into the common or the forward dome just like they do on the boosters, and then we'll see the actual lug or socket. I believe that's probably going to go away.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's adding that much structure inside the payload bay is probably not the best plan.
Yeah, they basically have two systems in place right now that are doing roughly the same thing, and that in terms of the mantra of trying to simplify things, that goes completely against what they're trying to do. So this is simply just an interim way to get something to function, knowing that there's going to be a long-term plan. This photo is kind of cool because you can see where the Starlink was and where they moved it above that catch pin. So you can see where they covered it in the middle of the black paint. There's actually the three different pins to attach the Starlink, and then the cover plate for the avionics to go through. So that's where it was, and they've moved it above it. And yeah, so they're, like I said, Ship 33, it's kind of just all over the place. They're just testing a bunch of different ideas.
Well, the other thing that for moving the catch point down with the edge, they may be trying to smooth out the turbulent flow before it hits the that portion to make a little pocket to protect the pin.
Yeah, the higher up the pin is, if you think about the Starship re-entering at like a 70-degree angle, with the version 1, the flaps were much lower, so it was a lot of more like turbulent, aerodynamics happening kind of behind the ship. So that's likely why we saw that patterning denting on the ship during re-entry on the flap camera along the side of the ship. So with the flaps being moved, they're probably cleaning up a lot of the air around the sides of the ship, and then if they move these down even further, they can kind of guarantee that it is in that cleaner area. But we might need a lot more visuals in order to represent that very cleanly.
Yeah, the new flap cams will definitely help.
This is a good photo of the new Maxilla. What do you call sticker? He's holding chopsticks this time, which is on a ship. That's good to see. On a ship means that they're getting serious about catching with the chopsticks. Now, a lot of people ask, what is the go with this bit of black paint here as well? Any ideas on that, Ryan?
Yeah, so we covered this in show and tell last night as well, but you can kind of see the row of tiles there to the right. There's a lot of kind of white around them. So these tiles, we know they've actually taken them off and they put on these new ones. And there's other photos that kind of show this a little bit easier. You can kind of see it here with the lighting, but these tiles on the left side of them actually taper toward the steel. So instead of being out flush, with the rest of the tiles, actually about halfway in them, they kind of taper back and get basically skinnier. And we believe these are the tiles that SpaceX talks about in their little press release about kind of a cleaner flat edge. I can't remember the exact wording, but essentially what they were saying is that it would be a non-jagged edge on the hex tiles, and they want to see what that's going to do to the side of the vehicle, because it's possible that that jagged hex tile edge was causing excess turbulence and heating along the side of the vehicle, and having this kind of more of a flush finish, it might actually decrease some of the heating. So they're probably doing a couple of experiments with this as well, and it's quite possible that the black paint here is actually a visual tool that they can use to see how things are burning off. If it's not burning off evenly, then there's likely hot spots that are being created, and so they can use the camera on the flaps in order to actually see this region of the ship during reentry. So we'll be able to possibly see if there's kind of hot spots being generated. And there's actually a patch lower on the vehicle that doesn't have the black paint there. So they're probably testing kind of what it looks like with the paint and then what it looks like without the paint. And given that they are working towards trying to recover the entire ship this time around, which we'll see if that happens, they may want to be able to compare what it looks like without the paint to an area that's with the paint, as well as the visual analysis. So there's a lot of different tests going on in this vehicle. It's really it's kind of a Frankenstein ship, but it's pretty cool to see them being able to do so much at once with these ships.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So just on that, SpaceX targeting Wednesday the 15th of January for Flight 7, which is awesome. Okay, back to photos. I'll just quickly go back in here again just while we're here. Another thing from another photo from Starship Gazer when they're loading, which has some video here as well. Which one? This one. This is from Lab Padre. Thank you, Lab Padre. Bit of my edit. No, not that one. Is this the one? Hang on. This is a bit of my editing. So first they loaded up I guess this is a temporary solution, obviously, because they're building a new PES loader. So first they loaded up this frame on ship 33 just before rollout, and then continued to load, I think it's 10 Starlinks and a couple of separators, I think. There was 12 things lifted in, 10 of them being Starlink satellite dummies. So I'll just go back to that one. It was a good shot of it. So it's some of them have a large plate on them, otherwise just basically the spine, the back of the Starlink. And these are more, rather than mass simulation, these are more about the mechanics, simulating the mechanics, making sure the actual mechanics of the whole system work in space under 0G. There's one there.
Yeah, this PEZ dispenser is actually much harder to operate than you would think.
But some of them have this sort of flat plate in them, and some of them don't have that sort of flat plate in amongst them. So they're doing a couple of different things there. So yeah, another thing that Ship 33 is testing is some of the actual PEZ dispenser mechanism. So once again, thanks to Lab Padre there. And this was putting the ship onto the transport stand. So it was spun 180 degrees around to allow access to the actual PEZ dispenser, the payload bay door. Now here on the ground, so they obviously put it on transport stand first. That allowed them then to put the catch points on and load up the PEZ dispenser. Okay. Back to the ground. Back to the aerial photo, sorry. I think that covers the vehicles enough for now. So we've got the test article, booster 14.1. Is Slappy, that's right, isn't this the one they used to test the chopsticks on?
Yep.
That's now cut in 2 parts. Oh, that's what I had over there. Yeah, here we go. So here is half of booster 14.1. It's off to the scrapyard by Shadow there. I guess that's why Shadow had the extension, maybe, to reach all the way up to the top of that article. In our ground shots, aerial photos here in a minute, you'll see that Shadow... Is it this photo? One of these photos here shows Shadow with its extension boom on the end. This photo, there it is there. It's got its extension lattice on. I guess, would it need to be that tall to get under booster 14.1? It doesn't. Maybe it's for something else anyway. Doesn't matter. So yeah, booster 14.1's been scrapped, which is good to see. Around behind. Oh, go on.
Now it'll be interesting if they keep any of it for future test articles, since they seem to be fond of holding on to portions of them.
Yeah, like in Sanchez scrapyard right now with the old hot stage ring testing articles for sure.
Yeah, it was interesting. That was actually the bottom half that they, took out of high bay, the first. So the top must be maybe off to the side or something. I'm not sure how, with that bridge crane, how they're able to move it out of the way for the bottom. Maybe they just shifted it to the back of the bay. But yeah, that was the bottom. So the top, I think, is still in high bay.
Yep. Yeah. Well, then they wouldn't have. Well, they wouldn't have needed the crane to lift up to the top at all, would they? So yeah. So that crane must have done something else tall somewhere. Okay, around the back of Mega Bay 2 here, we've been following this drainage work. All seems to be nicely concreted over now. And they're continuing the storm wall around to about here. They've finished the wall and continuing to get the pathway finished. And we can see a bit of formwork here, so they're continuing right around the corner to match up to the existing storm wall and walkway. While we're here, I think there's no more forward flaps. I think there's a better photo of that. Yeah, over here. So there's no... This photo, thank you, sorry about that. So this photo, there's no aft flap sitting here at the moment. It's all looking sort of normal. I don't think there was anything of note Have they built that fence since last week? I think so, perhaps. Okay, let's go up to the ring yard here quickly. It's funny, these streams, sometimes I wonder if we're going to fill in the time, and then next thing we're definitely filling the time, so that's awesome. The ring yard here, I think the only thing to note here, there's a booster ring transport stand thingy. So a few of the stretch form E-dome parts. Some new concrete, there's always concrete going somewhere or another. This looks like a nice little entryway into perhaps some VIP parking for people to come in just to visit the place. Some nice gardening going on. So this is a driveway just to finish here. So there's still truck access into this area. So that'll be nice to see that. I guess they'll make these footpaths connect through there as well. Nice to see this little area finished off soon. It's been the messiest area, all this area, and this area as well through here. They're starting to put gravel down, preparing it for concrete as well. It's been such a journey, I must admit, from right back to this section back here, all the way through, around to the front of the factory, all the way around to the front of the factory and back around to tent 3, and then building the office, and it's been quite a lot of discussion. And then filling in with the factory, it's kind of all coming to a conclusion, which is sort of bittersweet, awesome to see, but kind of gives us something less to talk about. But there always seems to be things added around Starbase we get to talk about, so we're in no danger of not having anything to talk about for a while yet.
It is very interesting with that front part how the that driveway looks like it was intended to go straight toward the building and then have a parking lot in front of the glass structure. But then they've got this weird kind of like 45-degree, kick to go over into this parking lot, and then they put all those palm trees there in the front, uh, or yeah, right there in front of the glass. So I that seems a little odd to me, but maybe a change in plans.
Yeah, for a long
I would,
time we saw those holes getting dug. We thought there might have been some kind of structure here, but no, it's just for palm trees. The ugly office is mostly done. Oh, Kiwi.
it looks much better than early on.
It's called, what do you call it? Architectural styling. It's an architect's building. I don't mean to diss on architects. Architects perform an extremely important role in the construction industry. Sometimes we look a bit askew at some of their designs, but in the end, they're generally quite good-looking buildings. So, is this a display area or not? There's quite a lot of discussion. This may be a good spot for Hopper, maybe a good spot for Booster 12, sorry.
Yeah, I guess given the palm tree situation in front, without, I was imagining that they would at least have a like a row of parking in front of the glass structure, but it looks like all of that triangle is going to end up being some sort of a like pedestrian area, which definitely provides a lot more room for displaying a structure, whether that be a booster or even Starhopper. I think the biggest concern with putting a booster out there is that it is going to block the glass windows looking toward the launch site. But maybe they shift it off to a side if they do want to put a booster out there. But I do think it's probably likely though that we see Starhopper out here. It just seems natural, like it would fit in that shape for sure.
From the night views, it looks like it's a fairly open floor plan, so you could sort of move around a bit to see the pad as well.
GG in chat. The palm trees are for building security. That's funny. Good on you, chat. So this street here is getting its drainage continuing. This area is continuing to being developed. We still suspect it may be for apartment buildings. Not quite sure yet.
There's a permit that has that area highlighted.
So this may even continue all the way through, even down to here somewhere. Perhaps it's going to be quite a sizable building.
The permit is pretty much just for the area that's cleared.
Oh, okay. So not even into this area here where the trailers are, the trailer park.
Yeah, I don't believe it extended that far, but the way they mark those maps up aren't always that accurate.
I better get a wiggle on here. We'll go over this photo here quickly to have a look at the sushi bar. I think last week we saw the roof completely finished. Doesn't look like much has changed there. Over to this new 7-unit accommodation complex. They're continuing on with foundation work. Not much to see there. Over at the swimming pool area, they're continuing to build the, which I'm pretty sure is an amenities building at the front. And we saw the plumbing for the pools all come into the back here. So there's a plant room for the pools down the back, the 2 pools and the jacuzzi or spa. We saw last week, I think we saw the petals there. So it's all moving ahead slowly. There's some new palm trees. There seem to be a flurry of palm trees everywhere. A couple of hovercrafts down there, nicely parked. There's more of these accommodation units being put in there. Still nothing going on back here yet as far as what that is, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be more of these units put along that edge of that bit of concrete there.
Yeah, the spacing looks very reminiscent of the utility hookups.
So we'll go on to some questions and donations, please, Joe.
Yep, sorry about that. I was busy typing.
All good.
All right, I want to thank Ninja Decimator, pew pew pew, for gifting 5 memberships, as well as Not Tom B gifting 5 because he was a recipient of one of those gifts and paid it forward. Much appreciated. I have a $10 super chat from Felix11. RGV, really look forward to these live streams. Keep it up. Thank you. We look forward to that as well.
Thank you.
All right, a question from Moody Blues. When will we see a 6 vacuum engine ship?
Hand that one over to Ryan.
Probably not until we get to a version 3 stretched ship. The increasing the Raptor vacuum count is likely related to the overall thrust to weight ratio, and if they extend the vehicle tanks even further to have more propellant, they're going to be they'll be definitely under a thrust to weight of 1.0. So they'll need to add the 3 more Raptor vacuum engines. Even right now, uh, they're not under 1, but they're definitely pretty. They're a lot closer to 1 than I think they really want to be, which is hopefully why some of the mass optimizations on version 2 will actually get them, a little bit extra just by decreasing the dry mass. But it probably won't be until the version 3 ship, or at least a depot. Whether a depot is a version 3 ship or not, kind of remains to be seen.
All
Yeah,
right,
they
that
may
was
have to change the launch profile a bit to loft it higher if they get too much closer to 1-to-1.
sounds good to me. All for IX is asking, what about the clusters of 6 tiles on the backside of the aft flaps? Plasma impinging or cooling new cam sites? Thanks.
Don't fully know on that. It probably wouldn't be. It could be plasma related to there being like a turbulent flow behind the flap. It could also be related to hot staging, because we did see, I believe, the bottom corners of it was either Flight 5 or Flight 6. You could see that the flap got kind of cooked on the backside, so that it could be related to hot staging, or it could be plasma. Not entirely sure yet.
All right. I want to thank Eric Frazier for becoming an RGV Flight Supporter member. Appreciate that. And a question from Cal-El. What do you think they're going to do with those static wicks? They get burned off every time they come back from space, right?
They do. It would be very challenging at their location to try and prolong their life.
There's many things that are going to be in the way of like super rapid reusability, but if it's a matter of like the tiles can handle the heat and they can catch a ship, if they have to just bolt on a couple of static wicks and they can have a ship ready to fly, in 2 days, that's already drastically closer to their goals than they've ever been.
Well, in
Yeah.
general, too, a ship won't necessarily be. I think it's more important the booster's rapid reusable, and then they'll have a ship standing by with, say, for instance, Starlink missions, with all the Starlinks loaded, standing by to be put on a booster that's just landed, rather than a ship being restacked immediately. I mean, the tankers. I think the tanker's about the only thing that would be put straight back on a booster to be launched again straight away.
Yeah, the tankers are specifically what I'm talking about. That they would, want to rapidly reuse those to refuel as quick as possible, so that the boil off is less of a concern.
Orbital dynamics kind of limits them to once a day per pad. So having a little bit of work between launches isn't that big of a deal.
All right. While we're on this image here, a question from Gigi. Are they setting up classrooms or daycare?
Hang on, whereabouts we're talking? I mean, down here, we'll just go a couple of possibilities. We think, Alex, I think, brings this up a lot. I think there's going to be a building down here for activities, like perhaps pool rooms or perhaps like a hall or whatever. These would be accommodation over there. I think that's accommodation, if that's what they're talking about. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about.
We do know that they have the Ad Astra school where, or I believe they provide daycare service for employees as well. That's over near where the launch control currently is at. If that's maybe what they're wanting an answer to, they could possibly have another building that they might want to set up closer to town. If as the town grows, there might be more of a demand closer. So they may also build something else here, but I don't think we have any indication on if there's a school or a daycare place uh, in this area.
And with the new residential being built closer to Astra, it might make more sense just to expand the Astra site as well.
All right. Question from Moody Blues. How many Starlinks will the final version of Starship be able to carry, and have we seen a successful opening and closing of the Pez door in space?
We have not seen a successful open and close. That's probably a goal for this mission. They want the new redesigned door to function better in a zero-G environment. I believe it was Ship 28. We saw them test the door, and it opened somewhat well, but it seemed to maybe pop off its tracks, or it moved suddenly, indicating that there was an issue with it. So they'll be doing that on this next flight. As far as the Starlinks go, we know that they can fit more than 50 in the current Pez dispenser. We'll call it the dimensions, I guess, the payload area on it. Now it's possible that number can get close to 60, or maybe higher than we initially thought, based on the size of the simulators that they put in Ship 33. But it's pretty hard to tell from maybe a 3D modeling standpoint. If you have a little bit of error in measuring something and you multiply that by a number, that error is going to stack really quickly. So it's really hard to get a good idea of how many they can actually fit, based on the certain size of things. So it's likely somewhere between 50 and 60 that they can probably fit in the PEZ.
All right, excellent. I'll take one last question from Black Eagle here. According to the updated spec sheet for Ship on the SpaceX website, Ship has a thrust-to-weight ratio of exactly 1. What will that mean for hot staging? Will the altitude have enough effect on the thrust-to-weight ratio?
It essentially what happens is when you look at the booster, how it keeps coasting for probably, I don't know, was it 20 or 30 kilometers? The ship will be doing essentially the same, except accelerating, since the bulk of your thrust is needed to achieve orbital velocity.
Quite a few thrust to weight ratio of 1, or even a little bit less, is common with second stages. You don't need the same thrust to weight ratio once you get up to the second stage altitude. Like Alex just
You,
said, it's more about getting horizontal speed than vertical speed by then.
yeah, and by the time you burn off enough, you can start transitioning a little bit more to
All right.
adding a little altitude.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, yeah, as the Starship is, its engines are lit, it's going to start burning the propellant, and as it burns the propellant, it becomes a lot lighter. So at that point is where it's able to kind of accelerate further away. But the interesting thing there with the hot staging is like the the booster technically gets like pushed away from the ship, when it comes to hot staging. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic with the thrust to weight ratios of the different vehicles and all of the other dynamics at play.
Excellent analysis. Thank you all. We are go for launch site.
Yep, I'm getting feedback from the chat. Go to launch site. All right. Where's the good image? Hang on 1 second. So these lower angle photos give us some perspective. I'm told this is the same depth from last week. It took me a minute to work that out because it looks so much deeper here. So we can see the third row of tiebacks they had done completed last week. So that gives you a good idea of just how deep this trench is right now. So that's one
Actually,
of them. Oh, what?
it's actually as deep as it was back in December.
Even that far back, cool. So
Yeah.
this is where those lower altitude photos are really awesome to give us some idea of some things we can't really see from directly above, including just how deep these things are. Things like this little bit of cantilever, this little piece of concrete here, and so forth is cantilevered under here. It wasn't so obvious with straight down photos. And I think you're showing too, Alex, this little area here, how we can see just how much they're going to backfill in this area here.
Right. On the other side, it'll help makes the trench apparent depths a bit higher.
Yeah, so
So,
you think it looks like it'll come right up to perhaps this joint in the steel here, the whole backfilling part of the
right.
whole trench, part of this whole area through here.
Might not be everywhere. It might just be on the loading area, since that's the more critical area to you're gonna want it up.
They'll probably pour a cap, like they did along the Massey's one at the top. It's like a thick concrete area. So when they get to pouring concrete, I kind of expect to see a lot of rebar assembled through that area.
Most definitely.
Deeper than Elon's pockets? I don't think so.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, look, we think these excavators are here for launch. They seem a bit precarious, don't they? But I think in this last photo, they look particularly precarious. But In this photo, they look quite secure there.
And what's interesting from this shot and the previous one, they're pouring down a blinding layer they're going to put a pile cap for this upper structure, and more than likely they're going to cut back the sheet piles in the area and tie it into the wall that they're prepping for the little bump out below, since they have some rebar extending past on the inside of the trench.
That more lines up with this area, doesn't it? It's a bit deceiving. Sometimes depth is a bit harder on those lower photos.
Yeah, it's from the other. There's another angle. You can kind of see that they're gonna be at a very similar height.
Let's go drop back to last week's photo. This sort of gives us a bit more of an idea, just to get your bearings as to where those piles are compared to where this part of the concrete is. And I think we covered this last week. These little embeds in here lining up with these piles here. So something significant's going to be in this area, which are probably SQD stuff.
If the SQD, if the top can be manipulated for maintenance, you're going to have the SBMTs are going to have to extend into that area.
You think from this side?
No, they're
From the other
probably
side?
going to be long enough that a few of them will extend past the outside perimeter,
Okay. Yeah.
but it'll probably be the SQD structure, since it's more than likely going to cantilever over the new deck.
I'm assuming you guys mean the booster QD. I think we
Oh,
we were calling it the
yes.
SQD. Yeah, the booster QD.
Oh,
I think it's likely that that there's a truss structure that'll be attached to that area, and it'll reach over, and it's interesting. Originally, I had thought that they might have a structure that pivoted toward the booster, and then at liftoff it pivoted away, but that process happens so quickly. I don't know if they'd be able to move, especially as big as the structure looks like it's going to be. Maybe this is so they can make it, retract quick enough. But I don't know if they can actually get it out of the way quick enough, given when they'd actually disconnect the booster QD, in flight, because the ship QD is much higher up, so that they can, there's some time allowing for it to move away, and even still, it doesn't move out of the way that much before the plume gets, dangerously close to it. So when you're that much closer to the source of the heat, it gets kind of hard to imagine that they can have something move that quickly out of the way, that close to the plume. But I suppose it's possible. That might be why it has such a large footprint, that it needs a lot of rigidity to kind of have that kind of inertia involved with the motion.
my crazy theory is sort of like a trebuchet, where it pivots up vertically, sort of like some of the Russian stuff does.
Well, that'll be an interesting little area to keep an eye on. That's very interesting theories there. I like them. Thank you. Okay, that's why we're quickly in this little image here. We can see where they've poured the concrete in the window areas, and they're going to more likely put smaller windows that are a lot more robust. I noticed they
Surprise!
not only took the top beams down, they took the vertical beams down as well in preparation for Flight 7 on the assembly jig, the chopsticks assembly jig. Okay, big move through the week. We noticed a building move. The comms hut has been moved, perhaps permanently, to this spot. Perhaps it'll be wired in here permanently, leaving the fluids bunker, or whatever that bunker is. That's not a fluids bunker. Sorry, that's sort of like a control room, I guess.
Yeah, I believe that was the control room they used for the suborbital pads.
Because it's still all the new electrical we saw coming from the tower, and all that area all has entered into this building. And remember, a long way back, there's the 3 bolts sitting underground here, and there was heaps of conduits placed in this area here that went nowhere really. So I imagine they'll be digging this area up again soon and exposing those conduits to perhaps go into this building again. We can see they're adding more pipes over in this area. We can see that the excavator's been moving backwards and forwards and unloading them off the trailer in here, loading in pipes. So all this concreting's finished. It's all looking nice and moving ahead quite quickly. The high pressure lines have come all the way through from one end to the other, completing their underground installation. There's quite a bit of talk as to why they put them underground. I think Alex had the best answer to that. Why do they put them underground there? Why don't they put them in the trench?
One, mixing and matching, then the welded pipes they've been burying them for 50, 100 years. It's sort of put them in place. It looks like they have a bunch of extras as well, because they have seemingly a lot more lines than are necessary.
True. So the big pile have gone. This little pile over here is gone as well. That was here last week of dirt. Okay.
Wonder how much of it was just spread for the launch, because it doesn't seem like they have enough soil to finish backfilling, or the slab around there is going to be relatively thick.
There's still a bit of backfilling to go. Yeah, they do tend to flatten it for launch. Okay, well, that's pretty well the trench and so on. They've just still working away in these areas, getting things ready for the next step along in that development.
Oh, the only thing is, last week, or for 2 flyers, we did point out the power they're running in the flame trench.
I'll need to go back to this photo.
Yeah.
From last week. This through here is power conduits. We can see them come around the corner into here and go under or go into this going into this cantilevered area.
I think they might just stub out or terminate there. It's hard to tell.
So that'll give power to this area here, which obviously is necessary. Do you think, I'll just go ahead on a question, Joe, that Chrome Kiwi asked, do you think this frame structure here may also include the pancakes water supply?
I think the center section that's going to come across, that other photo showed it a little better, where it looks like it's where the person neon through there is probably where the water's going to cut across, where it looks like the concrete might already have been poured previously, right in the middle. Now, across the trench, yeah. And there's right through there. It's probably where the water is going to come across.
Because that would be the center point right there. So yeah, presumably they would have the pipes come in, because you'd end up with a couple different levels. You've got the pancake, you've got the actual flame deflectors. I guess I don't. Is there enough room in the commodities trench to have? I don't think there's enough room to have those pipes in there. So those are going to have to be, I guess, going around the outside even more.
I think they're going to just cut straight across the center section between the 2 sides of the deflector.
Okay.
I'd
Yeah,
imagine
because
they'd come in from this side.
So they'd bring it from that side instead.
yeah, because if not, it'll be a very serpentine path.
So if the water deluge tank should, just using last week's photo still, should the water deluge tanks span over the top of this trench, the exit manifold, as we see masses as an example, would be right here. So it's quite a short little run right to there to get to the trench. Or otherwise it's going to go all the way around the trench one way or another, probably this way. Or yeah, just straight in, which is usually the better way to go.
Yeah, look at this. Hopefully, it's a perspective. It's not particularly wide once you consider the path they're going to have for ship transport.
Oh, that's way over there a bit though. That's
Well, those.
In terms of
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
up into here. So yeah, up to the actual trench. Yeah. So there'll be a
Yeah,
pathway perhaps this way, or maybe a ramp or whatever up here.
yeah.
So as long as they don't bring the vehicles around this way and bring them around that way, there should be plenty of room for the
Well,
tanks and everything.
those tanks are fairly large lengthwise,
All the way through to here
but
somewhere perhaps.
yeah, I mean, the perspectives are very deceptive with these open places.
True. So I'll keep a good eye on that little area as well. So there's a few major components we're still keeping an eye on as to how they're going to be installed and how they're going to eventually look, including the whole launch mount, whether it's going to be. So there's a lot of talk that the top of the launch mount should be sort of within 6 meters of the same height, but given where the ship quick disconnect is. So this, the OLM won't be down on the ground. It will have some height about it as far as if that's true, to bring it up off the ground, to be within 6 meters of that OLM. So it's still interesting to see how all that plays out, and how all the structure and foundations for that ends up being in that area.
I kind of disagree with that.
There's lots, yeah, and that's fine. We're allowed to do that.
Yeah, because depending on how they have the arm on the ship disconnect, it can either be lower from the end of it, or they have a lot of flexibility depending how the past the elbow is.
I guess they could even bring the ship face hugger even under that rather than over the top of it.
Right.
That's a good point. Okay, this week shows a nice underneath photo of how the rail system is working to put these high pressure tanks underneath these tanks. Go back to last week's photo. I guess it was covered last week. The rail system goes all the way through, and then perhaps down over underneath the locks, underneath the nitrogen tanks right at that end. And we're assuming those tanks are the same high pressure tanks as what's over here for other commodities, including carbon dioxide, helium, high pressure, nitrogen, high pressure oxygen, and high pressure methane for these commodity pipes here.
Perhaps argon, depending what they're using, inert they're using to flush some of the pipes and tanks.
I can see some. Oh, they're permanently mounted. They're where they're staying. They're on mounts. I didn't notice that.
I don't think those are permanent yet. They have the saddles for some of the larger pipes.
Okay. Wait. I'm just wondering what those little dots are. Okay, cool.
Yeah, those do look like mounting plates, but the placement of those seems a bit odd. I might have a new batch of crows very soon, but we'll find out soon.
I mentioned earlier at Sanchez there was a manifold missing for the heat exchanger, and there it is, obviously. And we still, I think that we got a new bit of concrete over the back there. And we saw this little concrete slab last week. And there's still the mounting for the third heat exchanger in here. So we still have a lot of infrastructure in here to be filled out with pumps and so on. There's this whole area in here can be filled right out. I think just to get a perspective, sometimes it's good to go back to these aerial photos. If photo, this one will do. So with pipes coming above ground here, so this whole area in here can still have lots and lots of infrastructure, including pumps and maybe other chillers or whatever they decide they're doing in here. Still doesn't look like this is going to be anything major like pumps or anything still.
There were some marks on the concrete last week. Yeah, tis that left half where they're potentially bolting racks or something.
Okay.
And
This photo, I'll go on.
and probably to widen up that two entrance closer to the building.
A few little mini cranes arrived. There's 3 of them, I think we found, these little tiny cranes. And boy, compared to some of the compared to the LR11,000s, these are like so tiny. I think I think they're here to be able to fit actually under the tanks to perhaps manoeuvre these around. I'm not sure about that. At least to help with all the plumbing and work around these areas.
There are a couple at Sanchez as well for the same reason.
Lots of tanks. So we're just on the back end of a wet dress rehearsal when these photos were taken. So lots of, more than likely, mostly nitrogen tanks. I think you're saying the nitrogen tanks are venting. So lots of nitrogen tankers coming in. Looks like they're all pretty well offloading at the same time. That'll keep Vix busy counting all of them. And a big shout out to Vix too with her compiling of Lepadre's videos and a lot of the time-lapse videos I use personally in both these shows and in the weekly video updates. I use Vix's work quite a lot, so I give a big shout out to Vix. She's pretty awesome chick over there in the UK. Okay, so what have we missed at the launch site? That's pretty well wraps that up. One thing, we'll just go on to the OLM. So they've restacked the ship, and they've reinstalled the cowbells that were taken off. Any idea what's going on there, Ryan?
It's we saw some people working up there, and it could be related to the valves. It's kind of hard to tell without really close up detailed images, but um, the way the pneumatic lines work on a lot of these valves is that they have them running internally on inside the tanks, and then there's essentially a bulkhead that they poke out of, and then they run a small line from that bulkhead to the valve assembly on the outside. Now, the easiest place to actually see this is probably on the ship, because the ones on the booster are actually covered. But they're really small lines. You have to zoom in really close to see them, and it's possible they could have found an issue with one of those. They wanted to kind of fiddle around with it. In order to do that, they actually have to take those covers off, and then they can get in there with their wrenches and take the little tiny pipe sections out, because they are on the visually you can see them from the outside, assuming the cover's not on there. And so I know a lot of the photographers have taken photos showing the valve hardware, especially on the ships up close. So you can see a lot of that, and it's no different on the booster. There's a lot of little tiny little pipes up there that you can see. Starship Gazer might have some that they put out. They might be a little far back, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
I might go looking for them. It's all good.
yeah, they probably were fiddling with the pipes on that for the valves. They might have found something after some testing or anything, or something that they wanted to maybe address with that. But yeah, the same design have been put back on the booster.
Thank you very much. We might, 'cause we're a little 10 minutes over time, but that's fine. We might go to a final question to donations, please, Joe.
You got it. Just having fun with my wife and some food chat here. Question from Moody Blues. Any thoughts on the quote unquote moon is a distraction discussion?
That was an interesting little thing. Well, we know that we've known for a long time that Elon's eyes are on Mars. That's been his prime driving force for the whole Starship program is about Mars. And yes, but some of these sideline projects, including Starlink, these are important sort of money in the bank sort of jobs, contracts. I mean, Falcon 9's doing quite a few jobs other than Starlink. So I guess being a business, you got to take work when you can get it, and if it's all part of the finances of. I mean, there's a lot of money going on here with the
The
Starship project.
From a technical point of view, it takes about as much delta V from low Earth orbit to get to Mars as it does to the moon. The surface of the moon and regoliths is not the same. It's what you'd have on Mars, so any learnings for habitation wouldn't be directly applicable. Currently have 20 years of long duration from space station information, so long-term habitation in space wouldn't be that valuable from the moon. The thermal environment's considerably different. Technically, the list goes on, where they're completely two different development pathways.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think there's a lot of different ways you can interpret that Elon statement, but I think for the most part, Elon's saying kind of more long term. It doesn't make sense for the moon to be kind of a gas station to go to Mars. It's easier just to go straight to Mars, and do what they need to do there. And it's probably completely unrelated to the Artemis contracts that they have. I think that's well understood that they have to fulfill that contract, so it's not like they're gonna not do that.
And from a business point of view, it's sort of they can hand off some of the work to Blue Origin later on for if we build a moon base for some of that maintenance work.
Cool.
All right, excellent. A question, or rather, a $5 super chat from Felix11. Thank you very much for that support. And says, it seems to me with the level of effort required to build the new flame trench, that this is why they avoided doing it for Pad A. What do y'all think?
Partially, it looks like it was earlier decisions by putting the wick drains down, because looking at Massey's, it took them probably about 5 months for all of the trench groundwork, and sort of the way they're building this and the soil improvements, it didn't lend itself to that construction methodology, so they sort of backed themselves into a more challenging construction corner.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of factors at play. I'm of the personal belief that the original OLM was essentially a test structure for understanding boosters, and that it could support a flight, that it was never intended to be kind of a long-term design, but they did what they did to make it work, and they learned from it, and they were going to apply that into a more final structure, because we've seen them change the design many times, some of them small, some of them larger, and if they had done kind of the paperwork style design scheme, and they'd done everything, all the analysis from the get-go, and they built a diverter and all of that stuff underground, all the infrastructure, they kind of would have been locked into a somewhat of a specific design, and I don't think they wanted that. So it was a quick way that they could get up and going, they could learn what they needed to do, and then they could decide if they had to learn from a mistake, that how to apply that to a new pad. So I think Pad B is really the culmination of a lot of learning, a lot of risk mitigation, and then they'll apply that to future pads as well.
And to expand on that, a lot of the design decisions of the OLM seemed as much more of a test firing stand than an actual launch mount, because, for example, like the Raptor QD startup system, adding that much complexity seems not necessary. But if you're running a test campaign, it would make a lot more sense for starting and that sort of monitoring.
Yeah, and when it comes like the Raptor system, I mean, I think it was a good idea by somebody who was trying to mass optimize by, well, hey, let's just shift that to, the on-ground systems. I think that was a good thought process, but ultimately, yeah, it adds a bunch of failure points, and I think they're learning overall that that environment, it just can't take especially a liftoff, that environment, the thermal environment. So, which of course they may turn around and we might see Raptor QDs on the new mount as well, just kind of embedded into the whole clamp arms. And I know Alex, you mentioned that show and tell last night, and it's still a possibility. But I hope that they don't do that. I hope that we do get a different design, and that was just one of the things they learned from.
You and me both. That I just want to write it off as a test stand.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree. A few more questions before we conclude the show, but before I get to those, I want to take a moment to remind everybody to please hit that thumbs up button. I know there's a bunch watching, probably in full screen, that may have not hit that yet. Please do before you go. Got a question from Crane Man. How many tanks would they need for Tower B Deluge, Flame Trench, and Pancake? So more tanks compared to Launch Mount A, and where would they be situated?
The Massey's tanks, using them for scale, about 5 of those tanks should be about the 400,000 gallons that the environment document said they were going to have.
And they're going roughly in this area here, perhaps somewhere in this little area here, I think, has been designated for them. There's still piles underground here we haven't seen exposed yet, and we're just assuming that they are for the water deluge tanks. There's a road through here still to be exposed, maybe a road through there. It's been so long since we've seen the piles get placed.
Yeah, there's a row of 2 or 3 along the edge of the trench right there, which just sort of makes sense to have them spanning over the commodities trench.
Agreed.
All right. Another question from Crane Man. Are the excavators for compacting the soil on the ramp? That would be at the flame trench.
Digging it all out. They they start at the bottom and then they work themselves up and takes the ramp with them. And sometimes they'll even leave an excavator in the bottom to crane out for doing the final cleanups and the corners and such.
We think they're parked there though, just for the launch, to be honest.
We're photo op.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how they're all set up right there. Question from our very own Chrome Kiwi. Do you think the truss structure will also hold the water manifolds?
Yeah, that's a question I jumped ahead on you there, Joe.
For which truss structure?
Over here, the QD.
It'll probably if that'll be one of the big tells if the top will be maintenance movable, depending where those pipes. Like I said, I expect it to come up, go across it, and then pop up where in between where Steph's hand was. yeah, between that set of piles or either side of it.
I am waiting to also see if there's going to be some sort of a um, platform that moves underneath, similar to how they have for the Massey's flame trench. Um, I don't think there's a lot of kind of breadcrumbs here, and there's just not enough together yet, I think, to make a determination on what's going to be what. But I do, just based on looking at other stuff, I think it's highly likely that the booster QD is on this side of the stack with the version 2 booster, and that's probably related to that at the bare minimum.
Do you think
Yeah,
that you'd almost think there has to be some kind of platform go under the OLM so they can, well, yeah, so they can work underneath the booster. So yeah, it's be interesting to see if they do a massive style platform, movable platform underneath there.
well,
Thank you, Joe.
they'll
Oh,
probably
sorry.
also have to have the sort of side wings like they have at Massey's for airflow optimization. So the platform isn't that. I mean, you're going to have structure to support it anyway.
Might be two halves that close over instead of just one giant one.
Yeah,
You're
from
talking
either
about this.
side.
You're talking about this piece of concrete here.
Exactly. And like Ryan was saying, if you split the opening in half and had one on one side, one on the other, it's much smaller of a footprint.
Yeah, we can basically see this mirrored with that piece of concrete under here as well, and then this platform split in two to go either way. I've been imagining that myself, to be honest. If it happens at all, though. Thank you, Joe.
All right. Well, that's all I got.
Awesome. Well, I'll start up, and I'll thank you, Ryan Hansen, very much for being here today. Make sure everyone goes over to Ryan Hansen's page over on X and give him a follow over there. He's well and truly worth following. His insights and drawings are just amazing. And thank you very much for your time and your brains today, Ryan. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. There's always a lot of cool stuff happening. I know a lot of us are probably intrigued by the arms at the test structure at Massey, so we'll probably see that come together over the next couple of weeks. And yeah, as Pad B progresses, it's been pretty slow going, but I think that we're going to see something pretty cool put together over here. So RGV is the best way to stay up to date with a lot of these images, and a lot of the stuff you can only see from the air. So thanks to Mauricio for flying and getting these photos for us.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
as always, Alex, I learned so much from you. So thank you heaps for coming along today as well.
Well, I want to thank Ryan and you both because Ryan brought so much good information like he always does. And yeah, thank you, RGV, for all of your hard work with the photos. The weather was questionable this week. So,
Absolutely. And I'll sign up. I'm Aussie Space Girl on YouTube, and I'm Stephanie B here in Discord. So appreciate you all. Appreciate those positive comments. That mean a lot to me. Every now and again, I get a bad comment that kind of hits me a bit hard, but I really appreciate your positive comments from everybody. And thank you, Joe. And I'll leave you to sign up and thank everyone else. Thanks.
Very well. Yeah. Thank you for your time, Steph. You're always appreciated. Uh, Alex and Ryan, we certainly appreciate your time and dedication and knowledge. Thanks, Inland, for turning the knobs and pushing the buttons. A lovely thanks to my wife, Astrogen, for rounding up the talent and bringing these shows together. Thanks, everybody else that runs in the
Joe,
background and makes RGV tick all throughout the week. I'm sorry, what
Joe,
was that, Steph?
can I just say one thing?
Absolutely.
Last year, I had some very generous donations from this community, and with that money, I managed to buy a brand new computer. So I really thank everyone that helped me out with that last year. So I bought myself a new computer, added a bit of money to it myself, and I've got a nice computer with some nice graphics and some good memory, and that's been helping heaps. So thanks, and sorry to interrupt you, Joe. Thank you.
No, that's great. We certainly appreciate everybody's support. I do recall that fundraiser, so glad that worked out well for you. And it certainly reflects on the streams that we have going. So thank you, everybody in chat. It's been a wonderful chat today. Much appreciated. And with that, I will say, most engines cut off, hot staging confirmed. Love you, bye.